Hey everybody, today I'm in downtown Carmel, and actually right behind me here we have the Palladium, and pretty incredible place to actually see a concert or a show or anything in the performing arts. Pretty cool place, but I'm in specifically City Center. Downtown Carmel has three major parts. It has the Arts and Design District, it has Midtown, and then it has City Center, and they all have different things. But the reason I'm here today in downtown Carmel, because I'm gonna go through a few of the questions that I hear most about Carmel and people wanting to move here that I've heard really over the past couple of years or so. So stay tuned. Hey everybody, I'm Jason Compton with the Compton Home Group. Welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time to the channel and you want to know everything there is to know about living in a place like Carmel, Indiana, or Indianapolis, Indiana, or any of the cities and towns surrounding Indianapolis, then make sure you hit that subscribe button and tap the little bell so you're notified every time we do a new video. Now we have people reaching out to us from all over the country with questions about living in Carmel, which is exactly what I'm gonna go through today, some of the most common ones that I hear about Carmel. But if you have questions about Carmel, if you have questions about Indianapolis, or any of those cities and towns that surround the Indy Metro, then make sure you reach out any way that you know how. We'll always have your back with those questions, and we'll certainly have your back when it comes time for you to make your move to Indianapolis, Carmel, or anywhere in the Indy Metro. Okay, first question that I really hear quite often, as will help a lot of families moving. So I'm gonna walk around. There's a lot going on this morning. Actually, you can see the truck here that's watering the grass behind me. This is where the Christmas Kindle Mock actually happens. So there's actually an ice rink over there right around Christmas time for quite a long time actually, and then booths and all kinds of permanent structures, at least seemingly permanent structures around this particular area right around that time. But we have a lot of families that are moving into this particular area. Sure, nobody's driving through here. And whenever we get into a neighborhood, they want to be sure that there are kids around, especially if you have young kids. So let's say you've got 6 and 8-year-olds, something like that. Of course, want kids that are pretty close to the same age as your own kids in those neighborhoods. And I don't know, Carmel has a different reputation for a lot of different people. So a lot of people think it's older, some people might not know, and some people might think it's super family friendly, which is absolutely true, but they want to know if there are kids in that neighborhood. And I will say there's no guarantee as to how many kids are going to be in any particular neighborhood. The larger the neighborhood, probably more likely there are going to be kids there, but you have to look around oftentimes to see some signs of families and kids, like basketball goals, which are super common in Indiana, play sets, school signs, because around here you can have a sign made of your kid's name and whatever activity they're in. If they're in choir, if they're in band, if they're in baseball, or softball, something like that. It could be above the garage or it could be in the yard, somewhere in there. So you can look for signs like that, but just doing the math on a place like Carmel, we know it's family friendly, but are there any kids here? Well, if we look at the high school, which is the biggest in the state of Indiana, it is huge. Now, super highly ranked. It's a really, really nice school, and being the size that it is, of course, it's not for everybody, and some people are quite okay with it being so large, but others maybe not. That's a whole other topic, but over 5,000 kids at the high school. That's just at the high school, so that doesn't count all the kids at the middle schools, and certainly doesn't count all the kids at all of the elementary schools. And there's only just over 100,000 people in Carmel. So if you do the math there, that's a pretty good percentage of people who live in Carmel who are under the age of 18, or ish, right in that area, 17 maybe or so, as far as a high school, and then younger. And then of course you have kids in Carmel that aren't old enough to even be in school just yet. So are there a lot of kids in Carmel? Absolutely there are. Now, if you compare Carmel to maybe some of the other cities that are in this particular area, like Fishers, so you look at Fishers, there are 2 high schools there, and both of those high schools are over 3,000 kids, and Fishers is marginally smaller than Carmel. It's still right at 100,000 people, but just a little bit smaller. And if you have more than 3,000 kids at the high schools, that's more than 6,000 kids. So combine those 2 high schools, it's larger than Carmel. And then of course you're gonna have all of your middle schools and elementaries that feed into those high schools. And then all the kids that are too young to be in school. So Fishers probably overall is a little bit younger. Let's truck was driving around. I don't want to get sprayed or run over. The average age in Fishers, yeah, probably is just a little bit younger than Carmel, but that doesn't make Carmel a place that just has adults, older people, and if you're moving in here with your kids, like, they're not going to be here. So that's something, again, we can't guarantee in any neighborhood how many kids are going to be there, but if the neighborhood's large enough, it's very likely that there will be kids in that neighborhood. Again, we just have to try to evaluate neighborhood by neighborhood, but that's a big question that we hear about Carmel. Am I going to find any kids here? And you absolutely will. Next question about Carmel is the traffic. So what's the traffic like? Now, this is a really subjective thing, honestly. Some people have an idea that just a little bit of slowdown on the highway is a lot of traffic, but if you're coming from Los Angeles and you commute to work, sometimes talk to people they commute an hour and a half, or sometimes we've talked to people that commute 2 hours, which is insane. I don't see how that's even remotely sustainable over a long period of time. I don't know how that's sustainable at all. So your commute's just around the Indianapolis metro, the whole city. You will have some traffic occasionally that's heavy because of construction or just the fact that it's early in the morning and people are going to work, or in the evening. But it's really just the distance that adds to your commute around here. So if you're 20 miles away from your home and where you work, that's going to take some time, period, just because you have to travel 20 miles. And if you add a little bit of traffic into that, usually it doesn't add much more time to your commute, just a little bit. In reality, it just sometimes feels like it adds a ton, but if you really time it, probably not that much. Now in Carmel, out of all of the suburbs on the north side, Carmel probably does have the most traffic. Now, is it bad? In my opinion, no. And it's understandable why you have more traffic in Carmel. Indianapolis is just to the south of Carmel, and then just to the west of Carmel is Zionsville, just to the east is Fishers, and to the north you have Westfield. So you have transient traffic. You might have people living in Westfield that need to work or go to Indianapolis, so they have to travel through Carmel. And it might be the opposite, Indianapolis to Westfield, or Fishers to Zionsville, or just one side of Carmel, like the east side of Carmel, over to the west side of Carmel. So there is a lot of moving traffic through Carmel, maybe of non-residents, but also the residents here. And being surrounded by some fairly large cities, yeah, the traffic is heavier in Carmel, I'd say. But the nice thing about Carmel is the infrastructure is really pretty solid. So if you are going east-west, there are a couple of really major roads that you can move pretty fast down, so the speed limit is a little bit higher. 96th Street and 146th Street, and those really border the southern portion of Carmel and the northern portion of Carmel. And you'll find some roundabouts on 96th Street. You're really not too much on 146th Street. You really have to get pretty far out west before you encounter any kind of roundabout on that road, but you'll have stoplights there. But in between those, you actually have some pretty long stretches where you can drive without stopping. So those two roads are kind of the major roads. But then in between there, you have other roads that travel east-west, like 106th Street, 116th Street. 116th Street is a major road. 126th Street I don't know if you consider it a major road, but it's definitely an east-west thoroughfare. 131st Street, which is actually Main Street through Carmel. It's just called 131st Street, essentially outside of the downtown area, roughly. And then, of course, you get up to 146th Street. But all of those interior streets, like 106, 116th, 126, and 131st, you have to go slower on those. So there are definitely periods where stretches, the speed limit's only 30. Well, that's obviously pretty slow. A lot of school zones, things like that, where you might have to go even slower. And then a ton of roundabouts going through there. So even though you have to move slowly on those roads in a lot of stretches, you really never stop. There are so few stoplights on those roads, pretty amazing. So they're almost all roundabouts. And I'm actually right here next to one behind me. Roundabout there. There's another roundabout up there. Back over here to the east. They're just really all over the place. So not stopping certainly helps quite a bit. And traffic is not going to back up really all that much in any of the stoplights because they really don't exist. Now going north-south, you have some major arteries that go through Carmel. Now, of course, you have a lot of streets that people in Carmel and people around Carmel know, like Spring Mill or Gray Road, Cary Road, places like that. And you'll find roundabouts on some of those roads. You'll find occasionally a stoplight on some of those roads too. And there are quite a few intersections in those. So I wouldn't call those major north-south arteries. The big ones are going to be Hazeldale Parkway, Keystone Parkway, and US 31. And you can literally go all the way through Carmel from Indianapolis or from Westfield through Carmel without stopping at all on any of those roads. They are fantastic. So they either have roundabouts that move really fast or an underpass where you go under a road or even over a road. for that matter. So you don't have to stop, and that keeps the traffic flowing very easily. And I would say, of course, 20, 25 years ago, now the traffic was a whole lot worse, especially on something like US 31, which is Meridian Street in Indianapolis. The traffic there was really brutal because there were just stoplights constantly. So if you had to come from Carmel into Indy or vice versa, especially at rush hour, you just had to plan on sometimes sitting in some traffic where you really would sit still for quite some time. So the traffic in Carmel, definitely a little thicker because have a lot going on around Carmel and in Carmel pretty much all the way through the week. The weekends, of course, it's lighter because you have less work traffic, but it will be a little thicker here than it is maybe in Westfield or in Noblesville, something like that. So that's to be expected, but I would say compared to some of the traffic issues that you have in a lot of other parts of the country, pales in comparison for sure. And the last question, of course there's a lot, but this is the last one that I'll talk about here in this video. We have a lot of people that move in from other parts of the country, and Carmel is the place they want to be. And when you do that, when you geographically narrow down an area, you will limit your opportunities some, of course. So if you're open to larger areas, you'll have more homes that hit the market and more opportunity to find one of those homes. And also Carmel is one of the most expensive places to live around the Indy metro. You have Zionsville right next door, and it's the most expensive, usually statistically, but it's also much smaller. I mean, we're talking under 30,000 people compared to Carmel. It's just over 100,000 people. So obviously then you'll probably have more choice in Carmel. But if you're limited just to Carmel, you're still narrowing yourself down. And surrounding here, there are a lot of really great places to live and fantastic schools too. So Zionsville would be one, Westfield to the north, Noblesville to the northeast, and Fishers over to the east. So keeping your options open with some of those other areas are going to give you more opportunity. But the thing is that people want to be in Carmel, either for the schools, but again, that's a whole other topic because it's a very, very big school system and one high school for the entire city. So you might want to be here for that, but there are other great schools around. So just to keep that in mind, but it's places like this and downtown Carmel and just how big it is for a city of its size, because of course it's not a very big city when you compare it to other cities in the country, but it's still a pretty big city in the state of Indiana. It ranks right up there. Not anywhere close, of course, to Indianapolis, but it's still fairly large, so not small. In the downtown area with the three big sections, that is a really nice size, and people want to be close to that, or they at least want to be close to what Carmel has to offer, maybe outside of the schools. We're talking parks, we're talking places like the Palladium, and just some of the things that go on and the things to do in Carmel. But you don't have to live in Carmel to take advantage of those. You could live in Fishers and come on over to Carmel. You could live in Westfield and come on over to Carmel. And of course, Zionsville and Noblesville too, and of course, to the south, when you get into Indianapolis. You could live in Indianapolis and come to Carmel if you want to and take advantage of whatever is that's going on. They aren't that far away. And I think that's one of the impressions that a lot of people have, is that if I'm living in Fishers, let's say, not unless you're really in super far east Fishers, or in Noblesville, you're super far northeast in Noblesville, and just the mileage puts you at a further distance from Carmel and anything that you really want to be in Carmel, then it takes a little bit of time to drive, but there really isn't a single place where it's going to take you more than 30 minutes to get here. Everything else is going to be under 30 minutes to get to where I'm standing right now. So the commute is just not that big. And also, by the way, Fishers, Noblesville, Westfield, Zionsville, they all have things going on and places to go that if you were to live in Carmel, you might want to go there. So all of these cities on the north side, they're actually really close together. They're sitting right on top of one another, so can live in one of the other cities and enjoy something that the other cities have. And one example that I give to a lot of people all the time is that Fishers Outdoor Amphitheater in the Nickel Plate District, it blows everybody else away. Now, there are some nice outdoor music venues in these areas, in these other cities, but Fishers is fantastic. So if you have a family and you on a Tuesday night want to go see one of their shows, one of their concerts, there'll be several thousand people there at this outdoor amphitheater out on the green, and it is incredible. It is super fun, really super family friendly. And if you live in Carmel, there's an outdoor music place here as well, but it's smaller and it's just something that doesn't compare very well to Fishers, so you may want to pop over there. So those are a few of the questions that we hear about Carmel. Now, of course, there are a lot of others that we do here too, but those are some of the big ones, and can expand on those even more. And of course, they may not apply to you and may apply to you. So you might have little branches of things and questions that come off of those for yourself and your family. So if that happens, if these don't completely answer those questions for you, then make sure you reach out. Happy to talk to you about those and how they might apply to your family. So until the next one, we'll see you later.